Hello Nexters, Adam here. Sorry about the dodgy chroma key. Nothing I can do about it. This is Keynote, but it's kind of cool. I'm kind of doing it a different way today. Today I want to talk a bit about the XR/MR Studio Control Gallery that we're doing as part of the IBC Accelerator this year and some of the things we found out. So as we know, nxtedition is a centralized consolidated system based on web technologies. And that's going to be key and crucial in what happens when we try to implement this technology into sort of VR, MR headsets in the future going forwards. It's not actually a story about the headsets themselves. It's actually a story about the underlying technology of everything that feeds the headsets. What exactly is all this AR, XR, MR, there's a lot of terminology. So let's try and break it down into something a bit more simple. So extended reality is an umbrella term. So right at the very far end of low immersion, you're talking about augmented reality. And what augmented reality is augmented reality is actually when you overlay something like on the glasses. So you overlay your Facebook posts or the directions that you're supposed to go. But when you turn your head, of course, that goes with your head. It doesn't stay where it is. It's just an overlay on the real world. That's what we would call augmented reality. The next one would be mixed reality. And mixed reality is when this time we bring in 3D elements into the field of view, but when you move your head, they stay where they are. So the headset knows where it is. It knows its environment. So when you plonk something down, you get that exact thing where it is, and you can interact with it, and you can touch it, hold it, etc. And then finally, we have virtual reality or VR, where everything is just 3D and just made up. So you're basically completely highly immersed in it. So what relevance does this have in broadcast today? What are the applications of XR in modern broadcasting? Well, you can take a look at, for instance, zero density. I'm only picking zero density here because we have an installation with zero density in Switzerland, but it's a great example of, you can tell stories that can't be told. You can't exactly find a dragon from anywhere and stick it in front of the camera. That ain't going to happen. But you can, with VR, create that kind of an environment. So you're telling stories that can't be told is the best way to really describe what VR studios can actually do. But what happens if we try to control a live gallery? What happens if we try to reduce the footprint of the live gallery, controlling a live broadcast, for instance? That's something that's an interesting thing to try out. So we're not the first people to do this. This has been tried by a few other people. I'm just bringing a couple of examples here just because, I want to give credit where credit is due, of course. Milan Wolf, he's a guy I discovered on LinkedIn. He's been doing some amazing stuff where he built a Unity app which takes NDI feeds, and then he can move those NDI feeds around a bit like a multi-viewer, and then you can touch them, and then it will take them on TX, etc. So it's a really clever use of IP signal technology alongside, virtual or mixed reality. So even I get it wrong. Mixed reality environments. And then Transmixer, who were involved in the IBC Accelerator last year around this kind of thing, and also they're involved with us this year with it as well, doing lots of interesting things about how they can bring the mixed reality world together with different broadcast environments and use cases. So we're not the first, we certainly won't be the last, but as I say, credit where credit's due. The challenge here lies in the convergence of the two technologies. You have the technology in the headset and you have the technology in the gallery, but how do you get the two things to come together inside the headset to allow you to do this kind of stuff? I've created this massively crazy graph. And it is a crazy graph. And it starts down here with the sort of like single function, multi-function. So it does one thing or it does lots of things. And then we have legacy solutions and we have state of the art. So basically, if I was to take something as simple as a horse, right? If I put a horse here, that is a single function legacy solution. Okay. Now the horse, for instance, you could add to that a carriage. Now the problem is that the carriage does move somewhere towards state of the art, but it is still a single function device. And worse still, the single function device is wholly reliant on the even more legacy device to make it work. So despite the fact I can carry more people and that I can carry more luggage, I still need the horse to move me from A to B. So you're tied to the legacy single function worst thing, holding you back from the future in a way. Now then you get a car come along, and once a car comes along, of course now we're not tied to the horse anymore, so we don't have to feed it, we don't have to find it lodgings, etc., etc. We're much more state of the art. We can carry more luggage. If we want, we could tow the carriage with the car. We've got options, we've got agility. So that's much more state of the art multifunction is the car versus the horse. So if we take that pretty crazy analogy and we apply it to broadcast, this is where it gets interesting. From the broadcast standpoint, you could take something like the NRCS. There's nothing wrong with that. There's many of these working all around the world, and it works perfectly fine. But it's still a legacy position, and it's also a single function. So you bring in the automation system, and that's not so far off. What we're doing is this kind of siloed. We have something does this and something does that, and the two of them talk to each other. So you could kind of, you could move the NRCS system into the cloud, for instance, but the problem is that you're going to need to use something like, I don't know, MOS protocol to talk to the automation system, and that's just a bit like the carriage being tied to the horse. You can't really get any further forwards or up because you're kind of stuck with these kind of legacy solutions that you have to talk to. You could take that across everything that we've got, the MAM systems, etc. Even if the playout system was a cloud playout system, it still needs to talk to the MAM system that knows where the high res is on the NAS on-prem. So you end up in this kind of strange situation where you have all these best of breed things, but nothing's really becoming multifunctional and nothing's really becoming state of the art. It's all kind of just, very slowly evolving. Now, what you could do is you could actually bring into the equation something like a vMix. Now, a vMix is definitely a multifunction device, but it's functioning in a kind of a legacy way, and just simply because you need a box. It's a PC, and it has some cards in it, and you have to put it under a desk somewhere. So although it's capable of doing the multifunction role really well, which it does really well, I'm not being down on vMix at all. Now, you could get yourself a Cloud Vision mixer. That's an interesting concept, because if you do that, you can actually free your NRCS, for instance, from the legacy system using MOS, and then you can bring that into the future a little bit, and then you're getting somewhere, but you're still basically building, single function solutions. We still have a single function Cloud Vision mixer, audio mixer, and we still have a single function NRCS. So therefore, we're not really going upwards. The issue here is, in order to target these headsets, you have to remember these headsets, they are multifunctional and they are state of the art. So they are right up there. They're right on that part of the grid, and rightly so. So remote desktop, I hear you say, is the answer, because what we can do is we can remote desktop all of these windows into these headsets. That's not actually quite as easy as it seems. Believe me, I've tried it. The problem that you get with these remote desktops is, first and foremost, you can't put these multiple computer systems into one headset. So you have to run everything on one computer. And that means you're putting a lot of pressure on a single computer to run a lot of systems. Imagine if you were running the MAM, the NRCS, you're running the rundown system, you're running everything on one computer, and then you're virtual desktoping that into your headset. That's just, too much power, too much GPU, CPU usage. It's very difficult. And then on top of that, you need to be close to the actual computer. As you can see, this guy's carrying me around on these PCs. You gotta have the computer near you. You can't just be out on the road and just suddenly plug in with a headset and your mobile phone connected to the internet. You actually have to be near the computer for remote desktop. The other thing that I found was that you're reliant on the headset app not crashing, and the plugin that's on the computer that's installed to send the desktop to the headset not crashing. So you have these two things that are prone to crashing, and when one of them crashes, it just brings everything down, and then you can't do any more. Basically, it just freezes. And then finally, because whether it's WebRTC or whatever they're pushing in, it tends to be quite latent because of the amount of processing it has to do between the computer itself and the headset. So when you're trying to cut a live show, you're just introducing more latency, and that's not really something we can do. So remote desktop doesn't really work, and it shouldn't really, because that's not really the key here. The problem, and if you'll forgive me for being in the child seat of this little thing, is that when we do remote desktop, we're basically it's the horse pulling the car, and that's not really the benefit of the car. Let the car do what the car does best. We're using the new tools in the same way that we use the old tools. And if we do that, we'll never fully realize the potential of the new technologies that are available to us if we keep insisting on using them the same way that we used to use the old tools. This is what you end up with. It's not very pretty. Now that brings me back to this consolidation of technologies. And it's not just Next. There are other vendors now exploring this route of being able to centralize and consolidate these systems into a single UI. The point of this is, from a development point of view, that just makes sense. It just makes sense to bring the prompters and the MAM systems and bring it all together and code it all together than it does to have all these different individual siloed responses. Now, going back to my crazy graph here, you can see that I've got like 3 things that I've added to multifunction here, because if we're going to put vMix here, we can also put these here. The Vision Mixer, the Audio Mixer, and the router, these are 3 things that we have always had, and we don't want to move them, because if we move them, then people can't push buttons and push faders and switch routes. You know, we need to do that kind of stuff in broadcast because that's how it's always been done. So we don't want to turn everything upside down and on its head. So why don't we keep those multifunctional yet kind of, you know, legacy solutions in place and just drive them differently from the headsets? And that's fundamentally what we're doing in this IBC accelerator. So it's a combination between both nxtedition and also Tinkerless Cues. We're talking about how can we drive these rundowns, not only using, you know, the VR headsets, but also using voice and using HTML graphics. How can we bring this all together with web technologies? One of the beauties of this whole situation with the IBC accelerator is because all of these companies are built on web technologies, it's very easy for us to interface together through APIs. That's not something that's so easy for this legacy stuff down here. So using these web technologies allows us to integrate and collaborate more than if we were using sort of siloed technologies of the past. So what's the outcome? Merging the real world with a virtual world, what do you get? So everything you're about to see in this video came out of the MetaQuest browser. The beauty of this is we don't have to install anything at all into the headset itself. We just use the browser that's in there and nothing else. So let's take a look. So this is a physical touchscreen with our shop box on it. You can see that I can see up there is the studio. So a number of things I can do. I can cut the cameras as I just showed you there. I can also bring on graphics, so I can bring on a crawl and I can bring on a lower third like that. I can also do a top button. And through the pass-through, I can see these buttons. So it's easy for me to actually push these buttons because I can physically see them. So that's what you get when you have real-world interfaces and mixed reality displays coming together to give you interesting results. Now, here is an interesting thing. This is an iPad running nxtedition on a train, actually. I was using it between Stockholm and Malmo just to see if it would happen on my mobile phone. It's great. It actually worked. You could queue things and do all sorts of things. Now, the question is, what happens if you just have the iPad as the interface physical to touch and the headset to see everything else? This is what happens.
Welcome to my house. But outside my house, I have rather a large nxtedition system, which here's my prompter. Inside my house is my multi-viewer, and here's an edit that I'm running, for instance. I also have my iPad physically here, so if I want to change the cameras here, I can just click here, and it changes here, changes there. I can also bring on the graphic. There's a crawl and there's an info box. So camera 4 is here, and then we can change the video wall, fish tank maybe, or the matrix. All done in real time. So you can see a whole nxtedition system working with an iPad and a MetaQuest on a beautiful sunny day in Sweden.
So as you can see, bringing together mixed reality with real tools in your hands gives you this incredibly agile and effective way to deal with things. So what's the conclusion of this? What have I learned from using MR as a production tool? Well, first and foremost, wow. If you please come see us at IBC, you will experience this for yourself. Everyone I put that headset on at all the exhibitions so far this year have just gone, wow, it's breathtaking. The scale of it and the ability to touch things, see your hands, it's really amazing. So if you haven't tried it, you definitely have to come and try this technology because it's not going to go away, I can assure you of that. And if I've learned anything else, technology stacks has been really fascinating. That if we use these new technology stacks, we give these headsets exactly what they want. That's exactly what they want to be delivered. They don't really want remote desktop. They actually want agile kind of web data that they can display really agile ways and move around and we can actually interact with. So you have to use these new technology stacks. The next thing I noticed was that pass-through is an enabler, that you can actually physically push buttons. You can see them. You can still touch the router panels. You can still touch the comms panels. The environment that you're in is not scary because it's exactly the same environment that you're always in, but you just have these kind of, it's augmented by these other displays that you have in mixed reality around you that you can configure as you like. Virtual monitoring, as I'm saying, different displays, being able to have things that update and that are relevant for the moment that you're actually in, and live feeds coming in and being able to sort of like point at them and click on them with your fingers it's a remarkable experience. And certainly, you know, it's a little minority report, but I can see it really actually starting to come to the fore now. And I think this is not something that you can say is just a toy. I think if these headsets can get lighter, then I think this is a real advantage in a studio gallery to have these augmented displays around you. Now, there's always a downside to everything. So what are the downsides? I just mentioned one of them. The weight, they're quite heavy, and the battery life is terrible. So those two things are really bad. You spend half an hour in this thing and it gets a bit claustrophobic. That needs to be fixed. But, we've seen this before. You remember when I remember when the first mobile phones came out. Well, they're terrible. But they eventually evolved. And as they evolved very fast. And we went through this whole evolution where they became much smaller. And now we have these amazing machines in our pockets that are so powerful and can do so many things. I expect the same thing to come from these headsets too. I mean, we're only really looking at about a decade that they've been building them, and they're already coming down in size and being able to do more. And even in this whole experiment, I got an update push from Meta where the pass-through video went from a little bit weird around the edges to absolutely perfect just on one software update. And you're like, wow, that is quite incredible. So it's not going to go away. And it's going to get better. So in summary, we need to use these new technology stacks, not these old technology stacks. We need to use new technologies to put into new technologies. We don't need to shoehorn old technologies into new technologies, or we have a horse pulling a car. Get what I mean? Then there's the mixture of the physical world and the virtual world, being able to actually see the buttons and push the buttons and pull the faders, etc. Pull the levers, turn the handles, whatever you want to do. It's actually really, really, really tactile, and it also takes away the fact that there is a bit of ambiguity with the touch thing when you're trying to do that in a virtual world. So you do have the ability to use the things that are under your fingers just like you normally would. Then people just love it. I mean, they just love it. And because people love it, it will catch on. It really will catch on. Even if you're just doing it for fun, these things are amazing. They're amazing devices. So it's definitely worth trying it. But I think that this is something that's not going to go away for the production environment for sure. And finally, there are some issues with the weight and the size. But as discussed, that will probably come down in time. So all in all, I think it's a very positive thing. And as I say, I don't think it's going to be like a fad. I think it's going to be something that eventually becomes quite normal for us to use in gallery environments. So if you want to try this, please be my guest. We're on stand 7A02 in Hall 7, just by the escalator that comes down there. We're going to have 4 of these on display. You can come and try them out. Your friends can watch you, take some pictures. You'll be able to see on a screen exactly what the other person can see in the goggles. But the cool thing is, if you're in the goggles, is immense. So it's really worth a try. So please come on by. And we do gin and tonics at 4 o'clock. So I'll see you at IBC. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.